You or someone you love is a high-achieving executive or entrepreneur. Others expect you to have it all together all the time. But the truth is this: it takes a tremendous amount of energy and hard work. You've sacrificed a lot and are wondering if it's really worth it. People make changes for one of two reasons: from the rock bottom of desperation or from a point of inspiration. In this new 12-week pilot series, we explore the following themes. Unlock your intuition and unleash your true potential as a high-achieving executive. Transform your company culture and elevate your leadership with unique perspectives and group intelligence. Choose inspiration over desperation and embark on a journey of personal and professional growth. Discover the power of intuitive wisdom and group intelligence to transform yourself and your company with Amanda and Suzette's groundbreaking new series, Freedom Flow Fridays. Amanda and Suzette are on a mission to support the transformation of executives and their companies, teaching them how to access intuitive wisdom and harness the power of group intelligence through embracing unique perspectives of individuality. Suzette and Amanda have joined collaborative forces to give high-achieving executives and A-player business leaders a new personal foundation, empowering themselves to upgrade the culture for themselves first, and then for their companies. So be sure to join Amanda and Suzette every Friday morning, 8 a.m. PST, live on LinkedIn, and together we will unblock the flow of your freedom week by week. Hello. Hey everyone, Suzette West here with the lovely Amanda A. Carpenter, episode 11 of Freedom Flow Fridays. We have one more episode to go before the conclusion of this experiment that I have really enjoyed. Today we're going to be talking about showing up for life. And I know probably many of you will be saying, what are you talking about? Showing up for life. So it's really easy to see all the craziness going on in the world and feel completely hopeless and helpless. And it's really easy to say, well, if you can't beat them, join them, and then you pick a side, or you decide to put your energy where you feel you've got more people, you're not alone, you don't feel alone. And so you feel the need, you have to pick a side or you'll be completely alone. At least that's how I feel sometimes when I look at what's going on in the world around us. But what I mean by showing up for life is realizing that where our attention goes, energy flows, and where our energy flows, we help to grow. And at the end of the day, the real freedom, our true freedom, starts from within. It starts from the inside. And it makes me think of a story by a historical figure named Viktor Frankl. And the exact source and all that, it doesn't come to mind right now, but I do remember one that he was imprisoned and living in the most heinous conditions. But even still, he was free. He was free. Because this is where that freedom really starts. And from this freedom, we can choose. Do I want to feed my energy to fuel the chaos? Or do I want to find my peace inside and focus in a more empowered way? We do have that choice. And it's so hard when the story outside is influencing the story behind the eyes, which Amanda has spoken about and mentioned in previous episodes. And I just want to check in with Amanda right now and see if there's something she'd like to add to this.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say hello to Brian. Brian says, hey guys. Hi, Brian. Thanks so much for joining us. So yes, Suzette, as you mentioned, everything starts with the one in the mirror. You know, there's a lot going on in the world today. And, you know, if we change ourselves, we have the ability to change every single interaction that we have with anyone. You know, so if I want my spouse to change to make me feel more comfortable, great, wonderful. However, if I change myself, I'm more comfortable with my spouse, but I'm also more comfortable with every single individual in the world. And as you just mentioned, how we use our energy to either fuel the chaos or to find the peace, you know, the foundation of our choice of which way do we choose? Do we fuel the chaos or do we find the peace inside? So much of it is what that story behind our eyes is saying, like, what is our baseline balance point of our autonomic nervous system? You know, so am I more familiar in chaos or am I more familiar in peace? And so the example that I use is, you know, I grew up in a family of 4. I was the third born, so I learned to like think as I spoke because otherwise I wouldn't get in a word. It has served me very well for doing what I'm doing. However, just busy, just lots of things coming and going. My brother and I nicknamed our home the airport because there literally was people coming and going all of the time, and we all had friends over, and we were like the place to hang out. So I was used to that chaos. I was used to that busyness. And I found myself alone in my dorm room in college, and I would do something to hijack that peace, that quiet, like trying to get work done ahead of time. Something I would call, I would create a drama, something would happen. I would hijack myself into chaos because chaos is what I was familiar with. And so with what is happening out there in the world, those of us that are more familiar in chaos are easily hijacked into everything that's going on. Those of us who are more familiar with peace can take a step back and be peaceful while the chaos happens around us. So I'd first ask listeners to think about, what are you more familiar with? And if you're more familiar with the chaos, then the first thing to do when showing up for life is to work on shifting your baseline to be comfortable with peace. Otherwise, we'll just get caught up in the chaos. And I dare say that the majority of the US, at least, and humanity at large, maybe, is more used to chaos these days. So foundationally, the baseline of our nervous systems is not used to that peace. And anything that is unfamiliar freaks our nervous system out. So our amygdala, the part of our brain that makes us react, is programmed towards pattern recognition. A pattern that looks familiar is safe. So if chaos is familiar, it's perceived as safe, and we're going to go into the chaos. So first, taking a look at the person in the mirror and asking yourself, am I more familiar with chaos or more familiar with peace? And if the answer is chaos, the work is to work on shifting your baseline to be comfortable with peace.
And let's talk about the baseline. Let's talk about the baseline for a minute. Like, I didn't even know I had to reset my baseline, right? I was born in I was not born into privilege. So life was, pretty hard growing up. I mean, it wasn't destitute, but it wasn't easy either. And you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So we live according to our traditions. We live according to what the culture expects of us. We live according to what our families expect of us, our friends expect of us, our circle of friends expect of us. But we never think to drop into our own truth, to get clear on what we want, what we expect from ourselves. And as a collective, it's been challenging because for so long, the story playing out in front of our eyes has been very chaotic. And so the nervous system, the baseline, it's normal. It's just normal. It's just the way life is. And we accept it as normal, even if it's not. And what we're not born with instructions on how to reset that baseline, because we absolutely have the power to reset the baseline of our own nervous systems. But we don't know how to do it. We don't know. Many of us don't even know that we can even do it, but indeed we can. And what happens when we don't reset that baseline is that our body, our mind, our whole selves is thinking that this stressed out state is our normal way of being in the world. And so even when we have some good days, our bodies are going to be like, oh, we got to get her back to normal. And back to normal is that stressed out, burnt out, fearful, chaotic state. But what we don't realize is when we allow ourselves to go back to that baseline, that's like Amanda said, that's our amygdala responding. And what we want is, I believe this is the prefrontal cortex that is responsible for the executive functioning of our brains, and it shuts when we are in a stress response. And that's the part of the brain that's required for problem solving, future planning, envisioning a better way forward, to raising our perspective above the fray so we can perhaps see a better way. But there's a process of training that has to happen in order to reset that baseline. And that is what helps to heal the story behind the eyes, so that the story playing out in front of our eyes has less and less impact on our well-being. And I don't know if you wanted to add something else to that, Amanda.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back on, you had said that we were never taught to reset the baseline. We were never taught to have any sort of ability to manage the nervous system and to regulate, so at the age of 5, for most everybody, we were programmed to learn to sit still in a chair, which is not our normal human behavior. Like we literally have to learn to disassociate, meaning our consciousness to leave our body a little bit for our body to tolerate sitting still at that age. And so it all begins with, really, rather than learning how to manage it, learning how to detach and disassociate from it is really what we're taught. So that's one of the keys, is to recognize that we never learned it. Nobody ever taught us. And for the most part, even myself, I didn't learn how to regulate my own immune system, or my own nervous system, until I needed to regulate my immune system. So until I actually lost my health to burnout and had Lyme disease and was on antibiotics for 20 months and still could not get better. 20 months of antibiotics, and I was off them for a week here or there. It was only then did I learn how to regulate my nervous system, to upregulate my immune system. And that was from a point of desperation and my own research of like, why am I not getting better? Because Amanda's immune system, and Amanda was downregulated. So the antibiotics were keeping everything in check, but my immune system wasn't strong enough to keep those few bacteria in check. So I learned it from a place of desperation. And once I learned it, that's what shifted me to really work with others and inspire others. And ultimately, that's how you and I met, Suzette, is through HeartMath Institute. Yeah.
Yeah, we sure did. I started my journey with HeartMath because it really transformed my life when I was doing, when I first started doing the work. And it just became such a compelling light bulb moment for me. It was like, I need to do this work because I experienced firsthand the devastating effects of not being connected to one's own truth. Because when you're not anchored, when we are not anchored into our own truth, someone else is going to plant that truth for us. You can bet the farm. Someone's going to put something there, and it's not going to be yours. And that was the case for me. And so I was constantly, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And what was wrong is that I was not connected to my own authenticity. And in fact, I was being dictated by people around me, telling me who I was and what I am and what I should be and what I should be doing. And I'm not good enough, and I'm not this, and I'm too that, and I'm too much. And I just started believing those stories, and it got so exhausting trying to please everyone and everybody that I started to just be a depleted shell, just existing and breathing in the world. And when I found that anchor inside, and when I found the courage to be who I am, and I understood that what other people think about me is none of my business, I think that was really key for me. Then I started paying more attention to the inside. I started realizing, I started using this, practicing with my breath, and remembering that my baseline was completely out of whack. And slowly over time, I was able to reset that baseline to a more peaceful state. Is it perfect? No. Because things that happen in front of my eyes still concern me. But when it all seems to be getting to be too much, that's when I remember I can't control what's going outside. I can only control what's happening inside, and I choose peace. I choose peace. So resetting our baseline, our nervous system, is really, really important. Not just for our nervous systems, but for our cellular health, because we are energetic beings. We conduct energy through our thoughts and through our emotions. And when we are buying into the story that's happening outside in front of us and not nurturing the story behind the eyes, our cells pay for it. We suffer more because those energetic thoughts, those energetic emotions, they do indeed affect us at the cellular level. Our cells absorb those thoughts and emotions to the point where, if left unchecked, has been proven through scientific study to create illness. I don't know if you have heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza, but he really goes deep into this work. I invite you to look him up, and he's got videos and books, a lot of material that talks about this. Another person who's done some deep work on cellular memory and health is Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's approaches it from a scientific perspective and shows that we can actually inherit trauma. So there's so many of us that have inherited trauma of some kind, to the point where we're living in a mostly traumatized world. And one more person I'd like to bring to the conversation and invite you to research is Caroline Myss. And she does a lot of work on cellular biology. Our biography becomes our biology, is what she says. And she teaches through the language of archetypes. And archetypes are energetic patterns of behavior that, if we are aware of, we can recognize them and we can actually start interacting with them to retrieve the messages they might have for us. Like the saboteur archetype, our tendency to self-sabotage. The challenge behind the gift behind the challenge of the saboteur archetype is personal mastery. And if we can recognize that saboteur, we can ask it, what do you want? Why are you here? And you can actually have a dialogue with that archetype to really get clear. What is the gift behind the challenge here? What is it that I have to, what is wanting to be here? What am I here to learn through this experience? Cellular biology is real. The effect of our emotions, the effect of our thoughts, the story behind our eyes, this affects our cellular biology and can even contribute to illnesses like cancer, deteriorating mental health, deteriorating physical health. Hate is a corrosive energy. It robs our cells of vital life force. And if we knew that we were infusing ourselves with such corrosive energy, we might think before we allow it to fully ravage our physical bodies. We can't control what's happening around us, but we have full control of what's happening within. And in fact, what's happening within is the key to turning things around. Individually, relationally, collectively. Showing up for life means choosing to show up in our best radiance. Showing up for life, we are open, we are receptive, we are kind, we are compassionate, we are suspending judgment to allow new ideas to emerge. And fear does not have a place here. Fear does not have a place in this picture, because fear drives hate and division. So showing up for life is taking personal responsibility for our own peace and happiness, to nurture the garden that is growing within us, our personal garden. Tend to it. Grow the seeds of compassion, of change, positive impact, of the ability to accomplish the impossible. When collective energy turns into synergy, because there's trust, there's empowerment, there is a will to turn things around. But it will not happen if we keep feeding the monster playing out in front of our eyes. I think I'm going to let Amanda say something if she wants to tag on to that.
Yeah, so I just want to, you had mentioned that, we have generations of trauma stored in us and generations of memories, and, our body remembers everything that has ever happened to it. So really, when it comes to the work that we're doing and the story behind our eyes, it's the story behind all of our own, it's all of our own life experiences, but in addition, 7 generations back as well. And I love that you reference Bruce Lipton's work. His work is amazing. Joe Dispenza's work. There's so many resources out there that really are scientifically backed as well. So I love this quote from Charlie Curtis. Charlie is a hypnotist and neurolinguistic reprogrammer. If you don't overcome it, you become it. And so, if we apply what's happening in the world right now, if you don't overcome it, you become it. Look at what has happened generations back. If the generation right now doesn't do the work for the previous generations, then we continue to become it. And we can apply that to so many different things that are happening in the world and all of the division. So I believe what's happening collectively is our opportunity to do our work for ourselves and also the work of previous generations to shift what's happening in the world, the vibration of humanity, and really shift the world for future generations, which is not an easy task. Not at all an easy task. However, to do the work is liberating, is absolutely liberating. So I'm so grateful that I did so much trauma work and did all of the work that I did, which was from a place of desperation. It was because I felt that I had no choice. Life wasn't worth living anymore because I was so sick. And now with what's happening at the collective, I'm much more grounded. I found peace. And it's like, yeah, there's, I feel like I'm in the level 5 rapids, river rapids every single day, but I've learned to surrender, to let go, to go with the flow. So when I slam into that rock, it doesn't hurt so bad. It's like, oops, ouch. Okay, move on. And when we surrender, we float downstream, and we're going to float right away from that rock relatively quickly. So yeah, I just wanted to share that quote from Charlie.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with collective disharmony of such a grand scale, it can feel so hopeless. But I want to remind you that, and I'm speaking to our audience, that is what they want us to believe. Who are we serving when we allow ourselves to become disempowered? When we allow ourselves to become hopeless and helpless as individuals? Who are we serving? Who benefits from this disempowerment? It's not us. It's the outside. And right there is the path to making the choice. Do I want to empower the outside, or do I want to empower the inside? Because empowerment from the inside is where transformation of all levels begins. Whether you're talking about individual transformation, whether you're talking about relational transformation, or collective transformation, it does not happen on the outside. It does not happen from the outside. That transformation can only come from within. And so when we choose to contribute to the outside world and the mess that is happening, we're not acting in our own best well-being. We're feeding the confusion. We're feeding the division. We're feeding the disharmony. And it grows. And just when you think it can't get any worse, it will. It has. Because we are living in the most divided time in history. And it did not happen overnight. It happened over decades. Decades of buying into the story playing out in front of our eyes. And when we talk about showing up for life, we're talking about not allowing ourselves to become zombies. Because when we start to allow the outside to determine our beliefs, our traditions, conforming to a dominant culture in order to find work, in order to find acceptance, that we have to surrender who we are to be acceptable to others. This has become the normal way. And this is how we became increasingly disconnected, not just to each other, but disconnected from ourselves. What I'm asking every single human being on this earth to show up. Show up for life. Show up for yourself. Find that real freedom, the true freedom that unlocks transformation on so many levels. To stop feeding the monster that plays out, that's playing out in front of us on so many stages of the world, the state, the systems that are failing. And everyone doing their own work, working in silos, doing their own thing. That's not gonna really help either. Because it takes, every force has its equal and opposite. So I choose to believe that in the chaos that's happening outside of us, that there is an equal and opposite force of compassion and kindness, and the ability to rise above the fray, to see a better way, and then to find and awaken the sleeping force that can meet the hate that is growing at an unchecked velocity. Showing up for life means showing up to do our own part, to find our own heart coherence, where the mind is getting along with the heart, that they're working in harmony together to establish a resilient baseline. Because I believe when every human being takes responsibility for their own inner life and well-being and raises that baseline, that is the highest contribution that we can make as human beings to humanity. Because if 90% of humans in the world were in coherence, I truly believe this world would be a different place. But we have to understand that it is our personal responsibility to work on our own heart-brain coherence and to really tend to the freedom that begins from within. And instead of projecting our energy out to an unchecked collective, corrosive, growing ball of energy, retract it. Retract it. And send it inward instead. And then from that empowered place, where can I serve? where can I serve? The equal and opposite energy that needs to meet this. Because that's the miracle we need. I don't know if you wanted to add something to that, Amanda.
Yeah, so to bring it around to what I think we talked about this in the beginning. I can't remember if we talked about it before we came on or if we talked about it in the beginning, but the life force, showing up for life and our life force energy. There's a lot of work that I do looking at the biochemistry of the body and the heme pathway and the foundation of life and, the different things that add to that life force energy. So much of it is impacted by our nervous system. We spend so much time looking at what do we eat, how hydrated are we, how much sleep do we get, and all of that stuff is important, don't get me wrong. But what we don't spend enough time looking at is what increases our vital energy or detracts from our vital energy related to our nervous system. So who are those people that actually drain us, that life force energy from us, and why? Is it because they can't accept us for who we are? Is it because they're in judgment and it's making us show up in our own self-judgment? So that's the piece. It's the nervous system and everything that hijacks the nervous system that really draws our life force energy. So when it comes to diet and sleep and hydration and exercise, those are conscious things we do. But unconsciously, there's so many things that are hijacking our nervous system and drawing that life force energy. And so awareness is the most important aspect. We can't change what we're not aware of. So awareness is key. And the other thing is really being courageous. A lot of people have changed due to hitting that point of desperation. Somebody is given a cancer diagnosis, and in that moment, they're brave. They move forward because they have no choice. And when it comes down to it, those that actually heal from like stage 4 cancers, if you look into the Institute of Noetic Sciences and spontaneous healing, it's the work that they did really on the nervous system and what was impacting that life force energy and showing up for life. So when they realized what's really important, it was none of what they were worrying about on a regular basis. They let go of that. They're brave. In the moment, they move forward with vulnerability. Boom, they find their life force energy and they spontaneously heal. So we have this opportunity. Some hit that desperate point from bravery and moved forward, but the rest of us really need to be courageous and step forward despite our fear. Step forward into leaning into that vulnerability and showing up authentically. What is true for us and how do we see life? When we accept ourselves in unconditional love and show up authentically, then we invite other people to do the same. So that's really the key, is to step forward courageously into vulnerability and authenticity. And when you work on that one in the mirror, you invite others to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think it was right before we jumped on this episode that we were talking about vulnerability being a superpower, and also the vulnerability it's a double-edged sword. Like, vulnerability for some is just like overwhelming and something to be avoided. But when we see it differently, when we see vulnerability as the doorway to allowing a focus on acting on behalf of the well-being of a shared humanity. I was listening to a talk from JFK. It was done in 1963. And he was talking about peace. And he was talking about acting on behalf of our shared humanity because we all breathe the same air. We all live on this planet. This planet is our home. And it's at stake. We all lose. So it takes vulnerability. Well, it takes courage to allow vulnerability to become a superpower. Because if we show up for life, we're showing up to give hope. We're showing up because we refuse to believe that it's hopeless. We refuse to believe we are powerless. We refuse to believe what the story in front of us would have us believe. About the way of life. Because now we're not talking from a place of ego. We're not talking about things to slant things in our direction and to garner likes and to gain popularity, but to change things for the better. And hate does not solve hate. Violence does not solve violence. And I don't care what side you're sitting on. I want to, we're getting close to the end here, so I want to read a passage from a book called Defy Gravity by Caroline Myss, Healing Beyond the Bounds of Reason. And she writes, or she wrote, I realized that I was overwhelmed by the vulnerability that arises in each of us when we are in need of healing. It's that feeling of waiting on the edge of hope or hopelessness that few other conditions in life can activate within us. This vulnerability comes from an eruption in the life force itself, as if the force were red hot lava threatening to break through your energy field and flood you with the vastness of eternity. You can tell when your life force is beginning to heat up toward that eruption point. It sends out distress signals like warning flares through your intuitive system. You begin to sense your body's stamina declining, and then the fear peculiar to the onset of an illness begins to filter through each one of your cells like the oncoming of a rare yet indescribable force of destruction. I've known that vulnerability because I've suffered through my own eruptions and most likely will have more of them in the years to come. That's life, after all. And then I want to read another passage that also mentions vulnerability in a different light. You are alive with infinite possibilities. Every cell of your body sings and shouts a full-throttled yes to life. Before you were born, you had a reason, a strong desire for wanting to experience the human realm. You joyously raised your hand and stood on your tippy toes to volunteer to partake. Your soul smiled wildly as you traveled from the angelic realm where all is love, whole, and perfect, into the realm of humanity. Through the challenges that come your way, remember all you need to do is ask. and you will be instantly refueled by love and support from your soul family. They are always at the ready. Your job is to remember. As you awaken each morning, revisit your passionate intention for this lifetime. Remind yourself, for this I was born. Gather your energy, creativity, talent, and will so no part is left behind as you cross a new threshold of adventure. And the mantra for this card was vulnerability is one of my greatest strengths. And the dream symbol, baby, signifies a new beginning. And in fact, a new beginning is possible. I choose to believe it's possible. So in this sense, I choose to see vulnerability as my greatest strength. And I invite you, dear audience, to consider doing the same. Beginning with activating that freedom from within. And we are right at 9:00, and I will see if Amanda has any last words before we close out, and then we will close out our 11th episode. One more episode left. Next week, the amazing AJ Kalatunga will be joining us. Can't wait. Amanda, any last words you want to say?
This has been so much fun each week. I can't believe next week is the last week. Wow, this has flown. So just want to remind everybody that right now, when we feel like we have no choice in the world and everything feels so big and so heavy and so overwhelming, we can always choose to retract back into ourselves, to breathe, to reground, and then only when we're ready, step back out in courage.
Cool. Thank you so much. All right. For all of you who dropped by, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us, no matter how long you stayed. And if you're watching this after the fact, thank you so much for watching, for honoring us with your kind attention and having an open heart, an open mind. And until next week, keep peace in your heart. Find that freedom. That freedom is within, and it can flow if we allow it. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Till next time.